Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are really excited you're taking time out of your day to be a part of our Learning Tuesday presentation here with Trinity University. That Learning Tuesday, that's not a typo, that is correct, TU, Trinity University. So of course we had to capitalize the TU. Just to let you know, this will be the first of 9 presentations we'll do throughout the summer. So feel free to sign up for as many as you want, log in and learn a little bit more about specific areas. We'll have one on college essay, college athletics, holistic review, etc. We'll have a slide at the end to talk you through all that. I'm Brad Derside, one of the admissions counselors at Trinity University, and really excited to be kicking off the first session with planning your college search. So really excited you're here with us today.
And I'm Gail Robertson. We are both admission staff within the Trinity office, and so get to work with students through the admission process. So really, this is kind of what we do, right, Brad? I mean, we get to kind of help with planning that college search. As Brad mentioned, we do have this whole series. Today, what we are going to be digging into a little bit more is really going to provide a little bit of an overview over what you're going to see in the other 8 topics. And so we want to make sure that we are asking some of those basic and also some of those most common questions and providing some of those answers and details for those as well. So I think we're going to start with the first question, Brad, and I'm going to ask you, give me some expertise here. How does someone begin their college search? What words of advice would you offer?
I love this question. I think it's a very appropriate way to start the series. Real quickly, just a little housekeeping. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A and we'll make sure to get to those at the end. So we're not forgetting about you. Just want to make sure we have those there so this can be more of a conversation when we get to the Q&A. But talking about how do I even begin my college search, not to sound cliche, but you already have. Whether you've actually started a list, which we'll talk about in a second, there's things that you've experienced in high school that have started to craft what makes sense for you in college. What do I mean by this? We're going to get to explore and assess, but first let's start with explore. Think about the things you've enjoyed in high school. Is it certain classes, certain subject areas? What was it about those subject areas that you enjoyed? Was it the professors or the materials? I've had classmates or students that have said, I'm really good at physics, maybe I should be an engineer. Well, maybe, or maybe you're really good at physics and astronomy, but what was it about physics that made you kind of think about this career or opportunity to explore a major in there? Think about how you study best, right? Is it what are your study habits? What are the things you're used to and like doing? Is it also how you like being graded? Is it the class paper or is it the Scantron test? I think we still have, right? The multiple choice A through E. I much more prefer the class presentation or group paper. I'd rather talk to you about why it might be A or C versus have to color in one of those dots. So thinking about that, not just what you like to learn, but how you like to be graded. And also think about what you enjoy doing outside of the classroom. A lot of your college experience will be outside of that classroom. So thinking about the extracurriculars you're involved with. Do you want to continue those? Was it a sport? Was it soccer, band, theater? Or is it something you've never done before that maybe you want to try, the school paper or theater, right? Something like that. So thinking about those things and assess, taking this time to think of what support you need. And I mean that from professors and kind of your students, your peers. What I mean by that with the professors is, do you need the smaller class size, maybe 10, 15 students where the teacher is right there working with you? Or are you fine in a big lecture hall with 200 students because you know how to master the material? Think about socially. Do you like the idea of that kind of raw atmosphere and going to the Saturday football games with 100,000 of your closest friends? Or do you need that tight-knit community where it's maybe 20, 30 kind of best friends that are taking you to dinner every day and checking in on you, making sure you're okay? These are things that I think will help you as you're crafting this college search, thinking through things like that. I love this next question, Gail, as we think through, okay, we talked about this, how do I begin the college search, but how do I build this college list that I hear so much about?
Yeah, this is kind of that first action item, right? I mean, a lot of that other stuff, it's kind of the personal identification and exploration. And now we're actually putting something on paper or in a spreadsheet, right? Whatever student in a family prefers. I think that, really when we're looking at building the college list, we're talking about refining and engaging. So it's the explore, assess, refine, engage, right? There are about 5,000 schools in the US that are institutions of higher learning, and about half of those are four-year institutions. For the most part, students are going to pick one of those. And so there can feel like there's this huge pressure point on taking this 5,000 and whittling it down to the one that you were intending not only to attend, but to graduate from. And I think it's important that we already have that in mind. I would actually say using some of these concrete characteristics can help students and families really whittle that list down to probably about 5 to 12. I think that's that ideal framework for how many students, how many schools students might need to apply for. I say 5 because we want to make sure that you have options in April. You can compare financial aid awards, compare some of those opportunities and awards. 12 as kind of that cap, because you still need to have a life outside of the college application process. I know that we've joked, Brad, about this feeling like a full-time job sometimes, right, of searching for colleges. And I think that we want to have that balance for students as well. What do I mean by concrete characteristics? These are the things that aren't going to change. So it would be things like the location of an institution, how large it is, the weather. Do I need a winter coat? Do I not need a winter coat? Right? I mean, these are not going to shift considerably, I think, as we see, I guess, time continue. Then we need to really start thinking about engaging. And the engagement is how we feel about a school. And so the best way to do this is to visit institutions. If you were just getting started and you're getting into your senior year, take this opportunity to see a couple of schools in your backyard. Go see a small school, go see a large school. You may not necessarily be considering that precise institution, but getting an idea of what works for you is really going to help in the process. We also want to make sure that students are being pretty realistic, and that can be about grades, both your grades as well as the selectivity of the institution. We want to be pretty realistic about cost, and we want to be realistic about some of those undefinables. And we want to make sure that this campus culture, again, is going to be a match. I'm stealing an example from you, Brad, that I know you've said several times, and I'm completely using it here because I think it's actually a great kind of designation. There are a lot of colleges that will be a fit. There are a lot of socks that fit, but in order to find a match, we are indeed looking both at the student and the institution and really trying to find a match between those two things. So I think that that's particularly important. I think one of the major next questions, and Brad, I'd love to hear you address this. When should a student apply? I think most of our students that are participating today are just now getting into their senior year or will be pretty soon. When do they need to start thinking about things?
I love talking about this in the logistical aspect, right? That we've talked about kind of the theory of crafting your list and finding your school, but getting down to the when do I actually apply to schools? And one of the things that I'm going to encourage you all to do is to keep track of all your schools somewhere. What I mean by this, I'm a big fan of the Google Sheets and being able to see why I say Google Sheets is it's free and a lot of people can live in this form, right? So as deadlines are approaching and you find contact information and you find specific websites you want to save, this kind of college list Google Sheet will save you a lot of headache. Why I'm bringing this up is because it will vary from school to school when you should apply. Most applications will open sometime over the summer from July 1st, July 15th, August 1st, depending on school, depending on application platform, depending on major in academic interest. So that's where I would want you to pay attention to which ones may have a direct admit program, say to a nursing degree. So you may want to apply for that much earlier than another school, right? So Trinity's first deadline is that November 1st. Do you need to apply right when the application opens July 1st? No, right? You have time to get all the things in with your application, which we'll talk about in a second, but you definitely want it in. I wouldn't start October 31st, if that makes sense. The things to think about are the different deadlines, right? So schools, you'll have this phrase, which I'm sure some of us have heard, early decision. Think of that as early commitment. If I get accepted to this institution, I plan on enrolling in this institution. Early action, think of this as early notification. I just want to find out before this regular decision, which is the one kind of I grew up with. That's the kind of the normal standard one. Early decision, just so you know, families and students, you cannot apply to a school accidentally early decision. To truly be considered early decision, that binding one, there's a form that the student signs, family member signs, and high school counselor. So even if you click it, it's not official till those forms are in. Things to be thinking about too, like I talked about with program specific, also thinking about scholarships, being mindful of, is there a different deadline for those? Does my application for admissions count for that scholarship information or for that scholarship application? I'm a big fan also of the rolling decision, right? Trinity doesn't have that, but I would have my son or daughter apply to a school rolling decision. What that means is typically you submit your application and somewhere 2 to 3 weeks later, you have an admissions decision. I would really like for them to have a yes in hand, hopefully yes in hand, right? Sometime September, October, as we're waiting for those other decisions. Again, we're using that sock analogy, trying to find that match. There's a lot that'll fit. A rolling decision fit might be nice to have as we're kind of planning that college senior year. But I'd also, we talked about that Google Sheet, Gail, and I love how you mentioned the friend had the Google Calendar, right? I think it was the volleyball coach, right, who set up the Google Calendar. So all these deadlines are in a spot that everyone has eyes on, because you don't want to wake up and say, oh, that was due yesterday. I wonder if I can get that in still. Where if you had this deadline on this Google Calendar, you know well in advance that it's coming up and that deadline's approaching. So I would think of applying most of your applications in by that fall if you can, before winter break. I think would alleviate a lot of headaches also. You know, as we talk about that, you know, we talk about when do I apply, we're going to talk a little bit about the how do I apply for admissions, and we're going to circle after that about how do we apply for financial aid. But let's talk admissions, because I think these are two areas that we need to talk about kind of in harmony.
Absolutely. I do think that they go hand in hand. You know, a lot of families kind of split it. Applying for admission is on the student, applying for financial aid might be on the parents, you know, depending on what's needed there. So how to apply for admission? First of all, there are 4 main admission types that I think most students are going to encounter. We're going to likely, because we're in Texas, see the Apply Texas application as the first one that pops up. And this is a shared application. 3 of the 4 that I'm going to be discussing are shared applications, which means you will use one application for multiple schools. And so you really get to have a little bit of a time saver. And we do encourage students to work smarter, not harder. And so utilize that shared opportunity. So the Apply Texas is accepted from all of the public institutions within the state of Texas, most of the private schools as well. So if you are looking to attend college within the state of Texas, that can be a great opportunity. We also see that the coalition application is going to be a shared application. Right now, we probably have just under 200 members of the coalition for college. These are institutions that really have made sure that they have support mechanisms set up to for students to graduate on time, want to make sure that there are funding opportunities for underrepresented students as well. So these are going to be colleges that have a little bit of a similar theme and philosophy. We then go to the common application, which has about 900 members, and about 60 schools are going to be international, the rest being in the US. So by far, this is the most common of the applications. And then we have the institutional application, which is exactly as it seems. It is specific for one school. Now, there is going to be variation school to school. And I know that we have kind of joked a little bit on the it depends answer. And I'm going to back off from that because it doesn't depend, but it does vary from school to school. You are going to see that some institutions are going to have requirements that might be a little bit different from institutions. And so let's walk through some of those too, because I think that can be helpful. What are those criteria for admission? For most of us, a transcript. So we are going to want to see a student's coursework that they have completed in high school. We're going to obviously want to see grades, potentially class rank, definitely rigor and the coursework that was taken. We are going to be looking at trends as well. So a student who may have started off a little shaky and kind of worked their way up, that's going to be a positive trend that we want to see. We don't necessarily want to see the other direction where we're starting to slide a little bit senior year. We're then going to potentially see testing. And I think that, again, for this year, a big theme is going to be test optional. Trinity will be test optional at least for another 2 years, potentially longer, depending on how we assess some of that information. So when we are looking at test optional, it simply means that testing is not required in order to apply for admissions. There will be some institutions that are test blind, which means whether you submit test scores or not, those scores will not be considered. Test optional means testing may still be considered if submitted. So there is a little bit of a difference between those two. The essay, you're going to, again, see some variations here. There are some schools that want one essay. Trinity is an example of that. There are other institutions that may have both the essay as a personal statement, but then have a supplemental piece of the application. And a supplement tends to be institutional specific questions. So I think the most common is probably, why have you chosen to apply to blank university, or why are you choosing to apply for blank major? And then you're going to get some wacky ones in there too, which are actually really kind of fun. So you'll see a little bit of everything for supplements, but the essay I think is a great opportunity for students to really express their voice. And it's probably my favorite part of the application. We then are going to see recommendations. And again, a little bit of variation here. We require a counselor recommendation and a teacher recommendation. And you can almost think of these as like third-party endorsements, I suppose. You know, this is what your counselor has to say about you within your community. This is what your teacher has to say about you within the academic environment, and those reactions and interactions within the classroom experience. And so that can be great insight into what you may be bringing to a community. And then there are going to be some other things that might pop into the admission process. Great example of that might be an admission interview. If it is something that is recommended, I typically would say do it. If it is simply something that is available, then I think you can really determine whether or not you would like to complete that particular opportunity as part of that admissions process. What have I missed here, Brad? Because I'm sure there's probably something I need to add in.
I think you tackled it wonderfully. And I love that you mentioned the admissions interview. You know, the essay is one of our favorite parts because we get to hear the student's voice, and it's limited common applications by 650 words. And there's definitely a Learning Tuesday coming up with that my colleagues do a fantastic job. I wish I would have had some attended that. I think we've been much more confident with my college essay. But that admissions interview is untimed 30 minutes conversation. We get to know so much more about you. But that encapsulates what we're looking for in the materials we have as we make the admissions decision. Now we're going to kind of come back and talk about the financial aid. So we talked about admissions. Now, how do I apply for a financial aid? And what's that look like? Maybe that merit scholarship and that need-based financial aid.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's a great starting point too, is to talk about financial aid as the umbrella with two main parts, the need-based and the merit-based. And so I think that you're already going in that perfect direction. Typically, when we're talking about merit-based aid, that's usually referencing most of your merit scholarships, which would be based on academic performance within a high school environment. You may also see some talent-based scholarships here as well that are still kind of under that merit heading. And that could be either an athletic scholarship for schools that are Division I or Division II institutions. Trinity is a Division III institution, so we do not offer athletic scholarships. Or it could be a talent-based award such as a music scholarship. And for us, we do offer music and theater and debate and art. And so there are some talent-based awards there. The need-based award is indeed going to be based off of a family circumstance. And so there's going to be a different set of tools that we use in order to look at that information. On the merit side, Trinity actually uses the main application for admission to also serve as the application for that merit scholarship. Some institutions will also do that. Other institutions may actually require a separate form or application for scholarship. So a good thing to ask when you're looking at different applications. For the need-based aid, largely, you're going to see the FAFSA as the main form, right? I feel like this gets drilled into our heads. So the let's see, federal, I'm blanking now. The free application for federal student aid. I knew it was going to get there. Okay. And so the FAFSA is basically that federal form that families will utilize in order to really apply for any type of need-based programs and support. The CSS profile is going to be an additional financial aid form that is utilized by institutions generally that do offer pretty generous financial aid awards. The CSS profile differs from the FAFSA in a couple of different ways. The FAFSA is going to look at a snapshot of 1 year. And so you can kind of think of it as a little bit of this static approach. Some of those main criteria will be the age of the older parent in proximity to retirement, the size of the household, how many students are in college at once, assets, and then also income. So those are going to be some of the big ones. The CSS profile really gives a little bit of this expanded version. So now we're looking at 3 years instead of 1 year, and it will ask additional information that may be used a little bit differently by different institutions as well. So over the 3 years, we also ask for special circumstances. And so if there are medical expenses, if there are expenses for additional educational costs, if there has been a change in employment that's been pretty considerable as well, all of those will actually be looked at and assessed within that CSS profile. So I think typically I think about that CSS profile as a better point for us to assess need-based aid and then also from there assist. Both the FAFSA and the CSS profile, their aim is to basically calculate the student aid index, or it used to be called the estimated family contribution. So that's still a term that sometimes we will hear. And that's basically what a family may be able to help contribute to a student's education. At that point, we will subtract that from the cost of attendance of the institution, and whatever is left is going to be your need-based eligibility. So I'll pause for a second. The sticker price is not the same as what a student may pay. There will be differences there. And so I think that's pretty helpful to know. Brad, I know you are a big proponent of the net price calculator. And so I want to make sure that our students know that that is available as well. So the net price calculator is a tool that is going to be available on any of our websites. If a school offers federal funding, which nearly all colleges and universities do, then we must have this net price calculator available on our website. So what you do is that you can put in information that gives you a little bit of an idea of what your academic environment might be, GPA, testing, those kinds of things, and then also put in some details about your financial circumstances. And then you will be given an estimated financial aid. And so it really does allow families to see this up front, what that difference is, again, between the sticker price and what that price might be that they are paying. I know that there are lots of other resources as well. One that we'll get to in a little bit is finaid.org. I'll plug it now, but we can talk about it again in just a moment. I think that this particular website does a great job of breaking down the language surrounded by financial aid, because there are so many acronyms and it can get pretty confusing pretty quickly. But they do have some financial aid calculators that kind of mimic that FAFSA and CSS profile to give families a better idea of what's next. So speaking of what's next, Brad, I think that's kind of the big question in some ways, right? I mean, if a student has applied for admission, applied for aid, what is that next step? What is a student needing to do?
I love this, and I love thinking through kind of the timeline that you're going to experience this next year. So applications open sometime in the summer-ish. Let's assuming we're applying sometime in the fall-ish. We'll get acceptance decisions and possibly merit scholarships sometime in the winter-ish. You'll apply, you'll get your financial aid sometime late winter, early spring, and then making that decision May 1st. So right now, let's live in this, we've applied for application, we've been accepted and merit scholarship, and we're living in this spring before we make that decision May 1st. Congratulations. And I mean this sincerely. Let's celebrate the wins. Let's celebrate that getting into college. That is a very, very big deal that I don't want us to just take away. That's Gail, I love how you phrased this the other day of, it's such kind of a weird mix of all the power is in your hands as the students, right? As you're selecting which schools to apply for, then it instantly comes to the colleges of who is admitted and who's not. Then it's back to the students as making the decision. So appreciate that roller coaster and that you got this acceptance and there's options in front of you. If it was the Derschlag household, we would probably go to get an Oreo cookie shake. We're a big fan of celebrating with sweets here. So I mean that, celebrate that and enjoy it. now's the time, if you think applying to schools on the scale of big weights on that scale. And I loved how Gail talked about the weather, the size, location. Those are those big weights. Now it's going to be the little ones that are going to make that major difference, right? Does this sock actually match you now? And it may change from when you're applying to this springtime that we're living in, right? Fast forwarding. So was it a major that you were really interested in? Well, now both schools have it. So it's this other thing. I also get to be part of the school paper, or I get to walk on the baseball team, or whatever your thing is. Those are the little weights that'll make a big difference. One of the things we have is this Trinity has this junior checklist that will let you kind of see just the seasons I talked about to make sure you're following the things kind of timeline wise. I'm a big fan of checklists. If you saw my sticky notes here, I'm a big fan of being able to check things off. So we'll share that resource with you. I highly encourage you all to have this dedicated family talk time to talk about college. A student was sharing with me 2 years ago that they had this. It was Sunday afternoon, Sunday evenings was dedicated family talk college time. So whatever works in your household, Saturday mornings, Tuesday evenings, whatever, that's dedicated to talk through things. You know, I'm thinking of my mom, who was very involved with my college search process. You know, if ours was Sunday afternoon and Thursday morning, she said, Brad, I can't wait to talk to you Sunday about the school. I think you'll really love it. Of course, I'm going to say, well, let's talk now, right? But had she just said it, I would have said, no, that's Sunday. I don't want to hear it right now. So I love this idea of this family talk time to talk through it. Stay on track. What I mean by that is your grades will still matter. So don't let senioritis get too much there as we get into that springtime of senior year. But take that time to see what makes the most sense to you. Is it visiting the school again? Is it talking to current students, talking to professors? If we're allowed to, if we fast forward to sit in on a class and see what it'd be like to be a student, take advantage of that and ask those questions that are important to you, right? I think that will really help as you think about what's next. And then it's time to select one, right? May 1st is that day to select. And so, you know, we have a lot of time in April to make that decision, but also be mindful of what April will look like as senior year is coming on, right? You've got a lot of things happening, but know that May 1st is that national decision date. Okay, I love talking about the resources and things that can help you with it. One is the admissions counselors. You know, that's what we all are, and we take that counseling part of our job very, very serious. We're not Trinity salespeople or university salespeople. We're admissions counselors, and so fortunate are we to know about our institution and other institutions and things like that to help you through this process. So if you have a question about a specific program at our university, please ask us. You know, one of my biggest pet peeves is when you call AT&T or somewhere and ask for something and say, oh, it's on the website. But yeah, I know there's 1,000 pages on our website. Ask us. We can send you to the exact link of what you want to know, whether it's about the engineering program or AP classes or summer programs, things like that. Trust and use your high school counselors. They are fantastic resources that know so much about universities and opportunities. You know, I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, and there's no way if I make it to Trinity from San Antonio if it wasn't for my high school counselor, right? So they know schools that you may not be thinking of. Use that time and as we talked about that beginning list, use them as a great resource. And that junior checklist, I think that will help also. Gail, can we talk about these other ones too?
Yeah, absolutely. And I did put the junior checklist in the chat, so everyone has that specific link for it as well. So the next resources that we have listed, most of our high schools do use some sort of software platform in order to kind of organize the college search and the college data. So some of you may be familiar with Naviance, others with Score, others with Maya Learning. So check with your school and be familiar with the platform that is available to you. Sometimes there are some really great college tools here to help organize when college representatives will actually be visiting your high school. Again, that kind of goes back up to this first one, right? The admission counselors, we want to get to know you guys. But also it can give some great data on like a scattergram of where students from your high school have maybe how they have fared within the admission process at this particular institution based on grades or based on test scores, those types of things. So there are some great tools there. I know that with Naviance in particular, there's also a scholarship tab. So that can be really helpful for students. I have a couple of other websites that I actually really like, and I'll talk through those too. The bigfuture.org is actually one of, it's a college board product. So same website that you would use to sign up for an AP exam or your SAT scores. So it's maybe something that you were already familiar with, but I really like their college search engine. They probably have about 20 to 30 different aspects of institutions where you can search for a school that really hones in pretty specifically on what you're looking for. If you are looking for a co-ed small environment in Nebraska that offers biology, they're going to tell you who has it. And there might actually be a couple of different institutions that pop up that you've never heard of before. So it can help both narrow and expand the list depending on what you're needing. Fastweb.com is a scholarship search. And in some ways, it gives too much information that you then have to wade through some of these scholarships. But I will say, I would rather have too much information at the beginning and need to wade through and refine rather than not enough. And so this can be a great resource too, if you were trying to look at some of those scholarship opportunities that may be out there. I mentioned finA.org just a little while ago, so I'll make another plug for it, specifically about financial aid. And it is general, so it is not institutional specific for one particular type of school or one particular institution. It just has some great information on breaking down that process of financial aid and really allowing families to understand what to expect. And then Brad, I think, you mentioned early on, this is a series, right? So this may actually also be a good resource for folks.
I love this idea, the way it's mapped out too, of these will be recorded. So I understand summer schedule is very busy, but the idea of talking about the liberal arts, how to distinguish yourself in all these applications that are coming through. We talked about the college essay and how to choose a major. Again, what I wish I knew my senior year. If I remember correctly, there's going to be some students that will talk about that to help you and answer your questions. And then ending with talking kind of more Trinity specific on July 27th. Thank you all. Thank you all for taking the time and listening to us. I know that the Zoom fatigue is a real thing, even though we may be used to it after a year now, but I really appreciate you all taking the time listening to us. Please, any questions, put in the chat. We'd be happy to answer those. And any questions we can answer specifically, feel free to use our contact information.
Yes, so we have Brad and